You tell many, many, many wonderful stories in your book. In fact, friends, I would say Miracles Are for Real is worth it just for the anecdotes, the marvelously documented stories of the miraculous just in the last 20 years. But when you think about the book and the studies, the research and so on that you've done, a lot of great stories. What is the one that kind of grips you the most? Is there one that kind of stands out?
There's a man in Ethiopia who got caught smuggling Bibles. And when the guard encountered him, he demanded that he give up the Bibles. And the man refused. He would not do this. And so finally he said, okay, the guard said, put your hand into the fire. He had this wood stove going there. He forced him, he said, put your hand right in the fire, or you give up the Bibles. The guy says, I'll put my hand in the fire. I'm not giving up the Bibles. And he put his hand into the flames. Now this, of course, has the touch of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to it. Put his hand into the flames and pulled it out. And the man didn't scream in pain, and his hand wasn't harmed. The guard was furious. He says, put your hand in again. Put it in again. Made him keep it longer. He then stirred the wood to try to get the fire hotter. The guard by now is getting angry. And he forced him to put his hand in for an elongated time into the flames. And then he pulled it out. This all come from a Nazarene missionary. The man is still living. He's in his 80s now that this happened to. And he pulled it out. And the guard was actually shaking. He was absolutely enraged, but he also was astounded at what had just occurred. And the next day, in a safety zone where he was hit by a stray bullet and killed. The guard was. That's one of those that has sort of the dimensions that you feel like you're reading right now.
Yeah, it sounds biblical, and it's
staggering. We had numbers of Nazarenes who contacted me. We researched this story, and we vetted all the stories very carefully. But numbers of Nazarenes contacted and says, hey, this is the guy you need to talk to. And we finally included that story in there. It's one of the more dramatic, has the New Testament flavor, well, Old Testament as well, flavor to it.
Something, some would say miraculous, happened just in the last couple of days. A mother and two children in a little BMW sedan were rear-ended by a tractor trailer. The tractor trailer went over the bridge, fell down 100 feet. The driver was killed. Their car, which was mangled beyond description, was left there hanging on the edge of the bridge. Did you see this story?
No.
It's hanging there on the edge of the bridge. It's so delicate, they don't know how they can get them out of there. They're all alive, injured but alive. And one of the rescue people says, what we need is and he mentions the name of it, a major forklift to come from the other side and stabilize the car so that we won't lose them trying to rescue them. He no sooner says this than I think it was the Marines come along. They were doing some military exercise with this big old forklift that was designed to hold tons and tons and tons. Within minutes, he's there putting it under the car, stabilizing it, and they're able to rescue all three. Now, there are those who would say that's a coincidence. Others would say that's a miracle. What is the difference between a coincidence and a miracle?
We actually outlined 5 different categories. There's simple answered prayer, and then what we call complex answered prayer,
right.
And then against all odds, and coincidence, and miracle. I would say that would qualify what you've described as a miracle, not merely coincidence. And the reason for that is, what is the percentage chance of this occurring?
Well, it was minimal. It's minimal.
Yes.
I mean, these Marines would drive this thing over that bridge maybe once in 20 years.
Well, see, miracles fall into 2 categories, basically. One is creation out of nothing, and the other one is the miracle of timing, right, or providence. Miracles are going to fall one of those 2 categories. In fact, many of the miracles are simply aspects of timing. For example, the fig tree being cursed and dying. Okay, that's a compressed telescoping of time. Here you have a fig tree, it's going to die eventually, someday, and Jesus, he speaks to it, he has telescoped time. Or maybe some people who would have gotten well over a 5-year span get well in a nanosecond. Yeah. So it's the telescoping of time. Other times it's the speaking of something out of nothing, 5 loaves, 2 fishes, or from death back to life. And in those categories, it can be it can be providence, or it can be the timing. In this case, on that bridge, let me tell you, if you're the one in the car hanging over the edge,
this is a miracle.
That's a miracle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a gripping story. Now we've got about a couple minutes left. Your wife needs a miracle.
She does. I thought her story would be either the first or the last chapter in this book. That was my hope.
Yeah.
because she's battling with stage 4 cancer, very aggressive, very advanced cancer. It's called primary peritoneal carcinoma. The entire peritoneal lining, over 100 tumors originally when we first diagnosed it. Only 4% of the people who have this cancer survive to the 5th anniversary of their diagnosis. We're at 4.5 years now. And we do need a miracle. And we've had a lot of treatment, all kinds, plus alternative treatments as well. We've had the standard in terms of, she's had many surgeries. In fact, as much as 3 months ago, a third of her liver was removed. We thought that took care of 7 tumors, but it now cropped up in the remaining part of the liver at this point. And radiation and lots of chemo. Had chemo just a few days ago, as a matter of fact. And we've done a lot of alternative treatments as well. And we recognize what we're up against. We're not in denial, but we fully expect a miracle. We're filled with expectation. We refuse to allow cancer to define us. Cancer can take away a lot of things, but it cannot take away a love. We've been married 40 years. We're more madly in love than we have ever been in our entire marriage. And so we're pressing forward, and we're fully expectant of her touch. We're not in denial of what we face. We understand that. I'm under contract to write a new book. It's called Miracle Stories, and we're working on that now. And it's my anticipation this time she will be either the first or the last chapter.
And if she's not?
And if she's not, I resolve that issue clear back not too far after diagnosis. It's not a statement of doubt at all.
No.
It has to do with the way the human spirit is wired to try to anticipate various components of life. But I resolved that issue in June of 2007. We were not very far after our diagnosis, and I saw how tremendously serious it was, and I also saw how bad it was going at that point. She was not doing well and did very poorly for about the first 60, 90 days. It was not good. And during that time, I came to the conclusion I would not follow the advice of Job's wife, Job 2:9, curse God and die, that if for some reason she was not healed in the way we longed for, that did not mitigate the love of God. It would not in any way impact the depth of my understanding of the profound love of God. I wrote my master's thesis on agape, the nature of God's love, and it provided me a nice foundation upon which to plant my life. And I believe His love is always there, regardless of what conditions we face in life.
Dramatic contrast between Job's wife, curse God and die, and Job himself, though he slay me, yet will I trust in Him. Jim Garlow is the author of Miracles Are For Real, What Happens When Heaven Touches Earth. It's the book we're offering you all of this month, friends. It's a book you're going to want to read. If you're like me, you'll read it page 1 to the end of the book without stopping. It's amazing. Back with more after this.